We are the Nonprofits. Hello, all you wonderful people in YouTube land. We're so happy to be here with you today. The Nonprofits is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of church and state and the promotion of positive atheism. You can support us at Patreon at patreon.com/thenonprofits. And you can tell us whatever you like or don't like in the comments below, or you can email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. My name is Johnny Angel, and I am here today with Mindy, aka Sassy Heathen, and our friend Malty. How are you two doing today?
I'm excellent. I'm really excited and really nervous, actually, to be on an ACA show. This is kind of a dream for me. So,
well, wake up, because it's not a dream, and we're happy to have you here.
Thanks.
We are. We're happy to have you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's happening in your neck of the woods? What's going on? What's new?
Me, nothing really at the moment. I have got so many projects kind of in the works that I'm kind of fallen behind. So I'm trying to get myself caught up. My biggest project right now is actually I'm reviewing a Christian book that was sent to me, a PDF. Someone said that they had evidence for God. Here, read my book. So I was like, all right. So I am doing live streams of going through chapter by chapter, kind of picking up her points and saying, this isn't evidence, but
you're not just doing that just for your own. You're sharing that with the world, because some people might be wondering, who is the Sassy Heathen person and where do I know her from? What? Tell me more. Like, where are you sharing this work with? Where's it at?
I am on YouTube. I have been on YouTube. Probably it's coming up to almost a year now that I've had my channel. I worked my way through the Facebook debate groups and kind of migrated over to YouTube, where I started participating in some streams, and I found lots of great people, and I was like, hey, I want to do this too. So I started my own channel and kind of discussing my own thoughts on, atheist topics and things like that. So it's been a really good time. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, well, and that was what brought you to us today. Actually, was a topic that we had was kind of overlapping with a video that I had seen and some other of the nonprofits had seen, and so we'll get to that when we get to that. Actually, we'll get to that next, I think. But no, we're really happy to have you, and I hope we'll see you here as often as we can get you here. Honestly,
I'd enjoy that.
Malty, what have you been up to? What's happening?
Working with the ACD, and we did a formal debate yesterday. We've got other community events that are continued to going on, like the philosophy tonight, and then a philosophy review tomorrow, and the MC work, with all the shows. So keeps me busy.
I imagine it does. ACD, just so the people in the audience know, if they don't know already, is
the Atheist Community of Discord.
Ah, fantastic. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
It is a thing.
Now I do.
Yes.
The largest atheist Discord site, Discord server on the internet's very tightly, and was, for those that you don't know, directly came from the ACA, and now is a fan site.
That's great.
I'm a little Discord illiterate, so I need to learn.
Oh, best platform.
Yeah, he says on YouTube. But I get callers. I do call screening mostly for Talk Heathen, and a lot of people have heard about Discord. They've wanted to check it out, or they had checked it out. And I think what I always recommend is, hey, we do there's stuff going on the Discord all the time. Come on in. You can talk to, V and Eric or some of the other hosts right there after the show. Come on and tune in. And while you're there, click around, see if you find some interesting conversations happening. Or sometimes we get callers that it wouldn't be a good call for that show, or it would be a good call, but we just don't have time. And I'll say, you've got a lot of people who'd like to hear about this in the Discord, people who are going to want to agree with you. Some people are going to want to point out some stuff that maybe they don't agree with. there's saints and sinners alike in the Discord. And I think that what's been really, I guess, edifying is to see people who I spoke to on the phone later recognize their name or recognize something about them. Hey, I talked to you earlier today on the Discord, and now they found a new community, which is really important nowadays when all we have is to meet new people is virtually, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's so nice to meet you today, Mindy, in person, right?
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, we've got some topics to cover today. We're going to try to go through all of them, but if you've seen the show a couple of times, you might know we don't get through all of them all the time. If we have a good conversation, we're going to keep on going and see where it takes us. First one is a conservative Christian leader says a man is responsible for how his wife votes. Second one, new psychological research links atheism to emotional suppression. So no smiling or crying out there. We got a segment looking back. We're going to talk about Jawaharlal Nehru, very important person in Indian history. We've got religious data platform targets the mentally ill and vulnerable people, which I think is despicable, and we'll get into that. And then finally, we're going to talk about our friend Jerry Falwell Jr. and what's going on in his sad little life. But first things first, Sassy, why don't you talk about this first article? What were some thoughts that you have? Before you answer that, let me say this. As always, the links are going to be in the description. Feel free to pause the video, read the articles, and then come back to hear our discussion. Okay, and then share what you think in the comments and in the email. So sorry about that, Mindy. What do you got for this first article?
Oh, this one was right up my alley, actually, in regards to the video that I did on my own channel. Basically, a conservative Christian leader, a man is responsible for how his wife votes. It's by Hemant Mehta. He's on YouTube as well, isn't he? That name sounds familiar.
He's all over the internet. He's the friendly atheist, I believe. Is that right, Malty?
That's correct.
Yeah. And I think he's been on AXP. I might be wrong about that, but we go to patheos.com frequently, just sort of circle back to see what he has to say. So he posts a lot of good material here on his site. So where were you going to take us with this?
Well, we were going to look at Jesse Sumter. He made a tweet actually, basically saying, "Brother, is a friendly reminder for elections to make sure that your wife votes as you do." And yeah, that was pretty interesting. And they've got some interesting responses to it that I agree with, actually. And he tried to. Well, V was actually in there.
I know. Yeah.
Here?
That was really cool.
Yeah. Are we allowed to swear on this show?
You may swear.
Okay, because I didn't want to read their tweet and say bad words, but that's a whole lot of words to say. I'm a controlling asshole, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And I mean, he obviously being a Christian leader, so he's going to stick to the umbrella of the family hierarchy is that it goes Christ, and then it goes husband, and then it goes wife, and then it goes children. So it's kind of like down the ladder there. So the man being after Christ, being head of the household, so he makes all the decisions. And I don't agree with that for a number of reasons.
Can I ask you this?
Sure.
Do you think that this is consistent with your understanding of what the Bible teaches?
This is what I haven't read the Bible completely myself. I could just never really get into the whole thing, but this is my understanding of the Christian family. My in-laws are very religious, and this is what they have told me that it is. Okay. So that's where I get that understanding from, and I absolutely don't agree with it at all. My mother-in-law's explained to me once that if with a husband and a wife, whether they have a disagreement about anything, that they're always going to err on the side of the husband because he's the head of household, whether she likes it or not. It's always up to him. And that's just not how I live my life.
Malty, I think you found something on this, didn't you? Didn't you find some citation?
Well, I mean, if you want to call Timothy 2:11 to 2:15 citation, let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain silent. For Adam is formed first, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived. If they continue to faith and love and holiness with self-control, yet she will be saved. I paraphrased a little bit there, but that's the disgusting part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I found some ones too. This is the ESV, but I don't think you need to really nitpick over who, which translation you're using. But the ESV, Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. Timothy 1:3-4, he must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. I want 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ, the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is God. There's a website here I found. It's openbible.info/topic/the_man_being_the_head of the house, as it continues. And there's just so much lousy quotations here. And you hit on one of them, Malty, and there's so much. So what I'm not seeing anywhere, and I looked for this, is anywhere in the Bible where it says that men and women are equal and are deserving of equal authority and respect, and women can teach, and women are just as capable as a man. I saw nothing there.
Yeah.
Did either of you find anything about this? What were you taught when you were growing up? What are some things that where are Christians, contemporary Christians, getting this from? Where they believe that they can be preachers, or they believe they can give lectures? This Paula White person, where does she get off telling me what to do about Jesus? Any thoughts?
Well, it's all interpretation, right? So everyone kind of interprets the Bible in their own way and makes exceptions for themselves. And it kind of falls into the category of cherry picking. Like, I'm going to follow the parts of the Bible that I feel like I want to, and I'm going to ignore the parts that I don't, because I want to do what I want to do. And I'm going to stand up here on my podium and tell you that I'm right.
Yeah.
Right.
I wasn't raised Christian. I wasn't raised religious, so I didn't see that in that way. I did see a power dynamic of maybe my father putting his foot down, and then over the next 2 weeks crumbling because people attack things differently in different manners. And when it's shown that you're wrong, then, well, you're wrong.
Yeah. I've talked about in the past some friends of mine who were conservative, very conservative Christians growing up, and these two brothers, they would tell me about their mother. When their parents got divorced, the mother went full Christianity, and she eventually, pulled them out of Baptist high school and taught them from home, because the Baptist high school wasn't conservative, wasn't traditional enough, wasn't fundamentalist enough. And she got herself a second husband. Okay, now this mother was very well versed in biblical teachings, and she had a lot to say about the Bible and how her sons should live their lives. And her husband was, I guess, what I would call a bobo, just a meathead dude. And yet, if he had an opinion that was different from hers with regard to a biblical teaching, she would just accept it and then try to understand how he was right. And then she would convey this to her sons, and they were very, very disenchanted with the whole thing. As they grew up, they saw their mother voluntarily subordinating herself to a perfectly fine, simple, not intellectually curious guy who had biblical authority over religious matters and other matters as well. I find that just hard to accept. Has anyone
It's interesting
seen?
that
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead,
I
Mindy,
was
please.
just going to say, it's interesting that she would even remarry in the first place, though, if she went that hardcore into her belief. Remarrying while your previous spouse is still alive is considered adultery in the Bible. So
Yeah.
that's another instance of I'm cherry picking. I'm going to follow what I want to follow.
Yeah, that is a great example of that.
And as soon as you said, she went full on hardcore Christian, what I went to was the person feels like they have lost their sense of community, their sense of support. So just diving right into what they can find for that to fill that hole.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Has anyone seen Jimmy Snow's videos, Mr. Atheist, Jimmy Snow?
Some?
Yeah.
I've seen some of them, yeah.
He's got a bunch of material on the transformed wife. Have you watched any of those?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I went
some
ahead.
Of my favorites of his.
Yeah, it's frustrating and to me sickening. Not to kink shame anybody. I'm totally fine with people being sexually submissive and dominant, consenting adults doing what they want, but she's intellectually, and what it appears to be in a non-kink way, to be, again, subordinating herself to a man. And reading some of these things that she put here, I went to her website, and she said this. As we are witnessing, most of the social media sites are heavily censoring conservatives. In one day, a few weeks before the election, my Instagram account went from receiving 1,300 likes a day on a post to about 200 a day. I've been put in Facebook jail multiple times for teaching that women are more easily deceived and that they are the weaker sex, both things which the Bible teaches. Most in this world hate truth. It's just a fact. They hate God, and they want to be their own God. Sassy, is that why you have a problem with this? Is that you just want to be your own God? What's going on here? Do you agree?
Yes, I absolutely hate God. I want to be the goddess of the world. That's exactly it.
I do a good job. Who knows?
Yeah. That's one of my pet peeves with Christians is that we're atheists because we hate God and we don't want to follow rules. Mm-hmm. And it's very common to say I can't hate something that I don't believe is real, and it's hard to get past that hump of mm-hmm. I don't believe in your God. It's not that I hate your God, I just don't believe in it, and they have trouble grasping that. It seems
it is strange, isn't it? Well, some of the things that I'm seeing, we talked a little bit beforehand. We're talking about voter intimidation. Mm-hmm. So if a man is responsible for how his wife votes, what does that look like? I know that there were some excuses that were made in the subsequent texts and tweets and what have you, right? Mm-hmm. Have a conversation. But what is, from a biblical perspective, what is a husband supposed to do if he wants to vote Trump and she wants to vote someone else, let's say? What does that look like? How does that conversation supposed to take place?
It also possibly can cross into that scary territory of abuse, of intimidating, threatening. How does someone forcefully change your mind or make you do something that you don't want to do? And that can be scary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I can see this in two ways. Either ask your wife how she votes and then vote the same way she does, so you're in accordance. Right. Or if you are the spouse who's being intimidated, do what you vote like you need to vote, and then say what you need to say.
Yeah. I suppose, like you talked about spousal abuse, I mean, that can be a really dangerous place to be. Probably if your husband or your wife is telling you how to vote, imagine they're probably telling you to do a lot of other things as well.
Oh, yeah,
trying to
definitely.
control you. And so it might be easy for those of us who aren't in those kind of relationships to say, well, just stick to your guns. But spousal abuse, domestic abuse is insidious in how it can undermine a person's confidence and independence. So
Well, being married to someone doesn't give you the right to manipulate them.
No. Now you have something here about Abby Johnson. Also said she longed to return to a time when women couldn't make up their political minds. What time was that? When was this time when women couldn't make up their political minds? Because in the 1920s, women were voting, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This is something that I've actually come across with Christians today, is that there's a lot of them that it's not that they hate feminism, they don't agree with it. They don't think that it should be a thing. And it frustrates me. It's because a lot of these women are on social media. They're sharing their opinions. They're saying, I voted this way. I voted for Trump or whatever. Well, the reason why you're allowed to have that opinion and share that opinion and have that vote is because of feminists. So the fact that you're just kind of countering yourself by saying, I don't like feminism. I want to go back to a time where my voice didn't count. But what are you doing by sharing that opinion in the first place? That's kind of silly.
Yeah, is that the position? Do you think that they're adopting? Is that they're against feminism, or do they just believe that feminism has gone too far? And what is the too far? I always wonder that. I was recently friend requested by somebody who shall remain nameless on Facebook, and this person called themselves an anti-feminist, and I messaged, what do you mean? I don't know you. First off, I don't accept friend requests from people I don't know unless I get someone like, oh, you got to talk to this person. They're really fantastic. They've got some interesting content. I'm not a Facebooker anymore. I just don't do it because I spent too much time on social media in the past. But I asked the question, what do you mean by anti-feminist? What is it about the principles of feminism that you disagree with? Is it that not that women and men deserve equal protection under the law, or that women are less intelligent or less capable? Unless you disagree with that position, what is it? I never can get a straight answer that makes any sense. It always seems like a half-baked concept. I think I don't think that men should be berated constantly for being themselves. Well, what does that mean? Like, any thoughts on that, Mindy?
Totally lost my train of thought when I was going there.
No, sorry.
I do see that there's a lot of Christian women like any group, there's extremists in every group, right? So you have feminists, and then you have the extreme feminists, the ones that say that, oh, I hate men, and I don't think men should be allowed to do this, and we should just get rid of them and have,
Sure.
So instead of looking at that as a whole, they're focusing on those extremists, the ones that end up being the loudest and making the most noise, and saying, I don't like this, but referring to the entire group and not really looking at it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we kind of do the same thing with like Trump supporters, right? Because not everybody that's a Trump supporter is an extremist. So we just look at that small group that is the noisiest and, makes the most ridiculous statements. It's kind of, that's their thing, right?
No, I completely agree. I was having a conversation recently about cancel culture, right? And we talked about it a little bit in the Discord while we were off the YouTubes. And my thought was this: I'd listened to some podcast or another talking about cancel culture is such a broad term that it's almost useless. Let's get specific. When we're talking about feminism, when we're talking about Trump support, we're talking about the conservative movement, we're talking about social justice, anything that is contentious, Black Lives Matter, right? People throw out these terms, right? And those who want to find what they want to find to not like will find it, and then they'll broadly paint everyone with the same brush. And I've got a problem with that. So you don't like feminism. Okay, what don't you like about it? Well, I don't think that women should be, queens of the world and all men should just shut the hell up. Oh, okay, well, I agree with that. But what about the other principles of feminism? Well, I don't. Okay, well, how about women's right to vote? Are you in favor of that? Yes. How about equal pay? Can a woman be the president of the United States? Well, I don't see why not. Okay, so where are we disagreeing here? Where are we? Should there be protections for so on and so forth. But to get into the specifics, I think is where you really make the progress, because we could just keep on shouting at mountaintops past each other and get nowhere using these vague terms, or we can get down into the dirt and hash it out. Malty, looks like you're back with us. Do you have any
Welcome back.
final thoughts about this this article? It went by pretty quick.
No. So just actually, I'm still trying to bring notes up. So.
Oh, that's all right. Well, I'll tell you this. I'll do a final thought here, and we're going to move on to the next section. But the final thought here is not all Christians feel this way about the relationship between husbands and wives. Obviously, they have to find some way to justify what the Bible says versus what they know is right and fair, and focus on the family. I found something here. The link will be in the description. The relationship isn't of master to servant. It's of lover and beloved. Biblical submission allows a wife to confidently follow her husband's lead. And Ephesians 5:23 makes it clear that a man does have responsibility for leadership in his home. But again, it's only as a leader that his wife submits to him, not as a tyrant or her superior. To round this whole thing out, these are very deeply ingrained gender roles that exist in this mindset. Men have to do this. Women have to do that. The Bible says so. And when it works for the people involved, well, jolly good for you. But there's a dark side to it. There's the desire to break out of these roles that don't fit you, and yet they're expected of you for the sake of the men and the women involved in this. And this made me think about the men's rights movement. Okay. This men are the protector, men are the bread earners, men are the ones who work themselves to death, who get conscripted into the military in the 70s. And this idea that men are disposable. Well, men aren't disposable. Men aren't working themselves to death for the sake of others. Just walk away from this paradigm. Strike out on your own. Strike out to find a life that's more satisfying for you, and allow others to live a life that's more satisfying to them.
Johnny, I think I do have something to very quickly to say at the end.
Please do.
As I said before, I was not raised religiously. I was not. Both my parents had some religious upbringing, some Christian upbringing, but did not follow the faith. And theirs was a partnership. My dad cooked 3 days a week, and my mom worked, and they worked together. So, and I found that to be the best way to go about things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's go on to our next article. I'm going to do so with very suppressed emotional responses, because that's apparently what we're all about here. New psychological research links atheism to emotional suppression. Malty, do you want to take a look at this one for us?
Sure. So this article was from SciPost. Again, the link will be in the description notes, and they're referring to a paper which was published as an advanced publication in Psychology of Religion and Spirituality. The name of that paper is Poker-Faced and Godless, Expressive Suppression and Atheism. So what the article and the study was about was how people deal with their emotions and how they express their emotions. And they found that there's a stereotype that atheists are cold, angry, hostile, maybe unhappy. And then there was some other data showing that atheism were self-reporting a muting of expressions of positive or negative emotions, or limiting their verbal or nonverbal cues on display. So they went through this. They were looking at two things: expressive suppression, and this is the the Spock look that we're talking about, and then a cognitive reappraisal as another way of managing emotions. So thinking differently about a situation. So I could see how atheists maybe have more of that, let's take a second and get to that level 2 thinking, thinking facts, thinking slow kind of look at things, and want to not lead with emotion, where people, they found in the studies that those that were religious or were agnostic were more willing, more able to have these expressive emotions going on, and that's how they were dealing with their emotions. And the cognitive reappraisal would be things like being very happy and then saying, why is this the case? Because God. And that's, so if we don't have that, is there a link between us not taking that step to the spiritual? Is that what they're seeing? Is kind of what I'm wondering.
I have not experienced this in my interactions with the atheist community. I mean, the study is what it is, but Mindy, thoughts?
I haven't been involved with the atheist community for very long, so I haven't really had a chance to interact with a lot of atheists, especially like outside of the internet, basically, because I don't live in a very religious community. We don't talk about religion a whole lot. So when you walk down the street and you talk to somebody, you don't really know whether they're a believer or not. Nobody really asks. But what this article made me think of is, as an atheist, and when I struggled with belief and I tried going to a church for a few years, I went to, it was a non-denominational church, but it leaned more towards like a Pentecostal type of church. So when they would do worship or prayer, there would be the hands raising up or the clapping and the talking in tongues and the singing. So that kind of behavior is really encouraged in the church to kind of show that emotion when you're worshiping God. And because I was struggling with my belief, I had a really hard time kind of finding that, well, do I put my hands up in the air? I don't feel like this is right. This feels kind of wrong to me. And that's kind of what this article brought me back to, is thinking about all those times where people were raising their hands and praising God. And I was just kind of standing there with my arms at my side going, this doesn't feel right. I don't think I believe.
Yeah. I read somewhere once that and you're not in the United States, just to be clear, you're from the frozen north, where things are a little different, but and Malty, you're not that far off, but there seems to be an encouragement in public education, at least in this country, of being extroverted, being outspoken, prioritizing leaders, prioritizing folks who are in the front and center of things, even though a great amount of the real work that makes this world run is done by those who can hunker down at their desk, whether it's a sitting desk or a standing desk, and get down into the details and work it out in peace and quiet, right? And I'm wondering, that emotive, that expressive, that loud and big quality that we value so much in the United States, at least, is tied in also with the religiosity of this country. This is just my thought when I saw this.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see that. So, when you were saying that you didn't, I wanted to bring it back to what you were talking about, Johnny. Help me out here. You were saying that you had not seen that lack of expressiveness in the atheist community. Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand?
That's right. No, you said it. You said it correctly. I mean, I'm Matt Dillahunty is expressive.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
and
he really is.
And not everyone's Matt Dillahunty, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
V or whoever.
So to bring it back to the study that this side post article was about, there was 3 studies, Canadian studies, that were done. One had a sample group in 1,000, 1,700 range. The second study was about 100, and the third study, which was really about that emotion being shown. What they had done is they had taken a group of 10 people, had them talk about something, say the morbidity or mortality, and then showed soundless video to people without knowing if the person was religious or non-religious. And they found a correlation that the people who were less expressive on these negative emotions, or these positive emotions, they had both sides, were the atheist ones. And and I'm wondering if that has to do with being closeted, truthfully, in one way or another. I came across a survey that was done in 2008, forms, frequency, and correlations of perceived anti-atheist discrimination by Johannes Hammer from Iowa State University. And he was saying that 41% of self-identified atheists had reported experiencing discrimination of different levels in the last 5 years. So I don't see that it's any wonder that if someone is being prompted with an emotional response that may lead to, or would easily lead to, spirituality or religiosity, where an atheist might shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it's like, is that the chicken or the egg in this situation? Is it that atheists are more suppressed naturally, and that allows them to resist the emotion, the drug that is emotion, and that allows them to sort of separate out, okay, well, this isn't the enthusiastic spirit of the Lord, inspiring me. This is just chemicals, or some dry way of looking at the world. Or is it that they have to be that way because they're in a world that they don't fit in? Which came first? What I found was, I found an article here about distrust, right? And it talks about, why are atheists so distrusted? Now, maybe it is because they're more withdrawn and people suspect someone who doesn't wear their hearts on their sleeves, right? That could be some aspect of it. Another thing that they were talking about was, people tend to operate, I've experienced this myself, people tend to operate using shortcuts. They're on autopilot. They're able to tap into stereotypes. Now, they're wrong in large part. The stereotypes about some groups can be very offensive and wrong and dangerous, but there are other stereotypes that allow us to navigate through our society. And people, when they're not challenging their own stereotypes, when they're not challenging their own default settings in their brain, they can tend to rely on it. And this article that I found here, Psychology Today, the link will be in the description, Distrust of Atheists, talks about the one present paper favors is the possibility that religious people tend to follow slower life history strategies. And this ties in. This means possessing traits like sexual restrictiveness, they're relatively monogamous, or at least less promiscuous, or they pretend to be. Greater investment in family until they leave their family for somebody much more titillating. Generally more future looking than they are living in the present. Okay. And so this idea that makes them look more cooperative than the non-religious. Now we talk about slower life history strategies. That would seem to run counter to the idea of being emotionally withdrawn is an atheistic trait, because you would think that if a person is more operating on a slower timeline, a more cautious timeline, emotionally speaking, then you would trust them more, because you would know that they're not going to fly off the handle. You would know they're not going to be impulsive. You would know that they're going to think things through, but it doesn't seem to translate in this article that I found. They said that people are using religion as a proxy for someone's likely reproductive strategy and accordingly life history traits. As such, when people have information directly bearing on the traits they're interested in assessing, they largely stop using their stereotypes about religion in general and instead rely upon information about the person. So I guess to bring it all forward, maybe if people were more open about being skeptical, non-believing, whatever you want to call it, humanistic focused as opposed to theistically focused, that once you got to know that person and you know this fact about them and you see they're being more emotionally careful, maybe then atheists would lose the stigma of being untrustworthy. Maybe in turn, they would stop being so emotionally repressed if that's caused by a fear of oppression. Does that make any sense? I don't know if it makes any sense.
Yeah.
No, it does.
Yeah. Mindy, did you have some things that you wanted to talk about? I think you were concerned about suppression, weren't you?
Well, I mean, I didn't really understand what emotional suppression was, so that just kind of took me down a rabbit hole of finding out, where would emotional suppression come from? How would we even learn it in the first place? So the article that I found, it says study highlights mental health consequences of parent emotion suppression. So basically, this article is saying that we would pick that up from our parents, and they actually did some studies on where they had two groups where one parent or they were heterosexual couples, so they had a mother, a father, and then they had the child, and they did different studies where they had the mother, father, the child, they had to do some type of activity, and one group had to be kind of emotional and not holding back so that it would affect the child, and the other group they would kind of hold it in so that the child didn't really understand what the parent was feeling at the time. So it was really interesting. And one of the things that kind of jumped out at me about this article and about the results of the study is they note that the consequences of suppression may be more extreme in long-term interpersonal relationships, and that impacts family dynamics, whereas opposed to suppressing, say, somebody that you casually meet in the street, or like somebody that's a little more casual or more of an acquaintance. So there was a bigger impact in those personal relationships with suppression than there was outwardly.
Well, we're talking about emotional suppression in laboratory settings, or we're talking about emotional suppression in these family dynamic settings. I could see how being emotionally distant, would be damaging for children, or would at least set a precedent for those children to maybe bury feelings, to not express them a lot. And I'm wondering if the suppression that was being talked about there is the same kind of take a step back from when you're out there in the world, when you have a reaction to something or when something good happens. That's different. That's okay. But did you get the sense that it was the same kind of emotional, I don't know, not cultivation, but so on the one hand, you've got being more withdrawn emotionally, not being like wearing your heart on your sleeve. And on the other hand, you're not showing your emotions to your kids. I don't think that the first study was saying that atheists are cruel and cold to their children, are they?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that sense.
I don't know. I didn't get that sense either. No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Because that I don't think anyone would reasonably argue that all of the wicked stepmothers or the cold fathers who refuse to interact with their children in novels and in fiction were somehow that was an acceptable place to be. Whereas I think we can all agree that maybe not, riding the lightning of emotion all the time is probably a good way to go about your day. Well, I'd like to move on to our next segment. This is looking back.
Looking back.
We're looking at November 14th. And Malty, I'm going to let you say this person's name because a couple weeks ago, I just kept on saying Cesare Lombroso as many times as I could. So why don't you take us? Who are we talking about?
We're talking about Jawaharlal Nehru, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name. It's a passionate. He was during the time of the end of the occupation of India. It was of British rule. He was one of the administrators, one of the people in the governmental office that really did some wonderful things, pushed for some great social improvements in for the Indian people during this transitional time. Yeah, it's also an atheist.
That's right.
So that's a bonus.
Just looking at, and I'll say, just looking at the notes, something that I found. So yeah, he was central in Indian politics. He was the first prime minister of India from 47 to 64. He was described as a Hindu agnostic, styling himself as a scientific humanist. He thought that religious taboos were preventing India from going forward and adapting to modern conditions. Quote, no country or people who are slaves to dogma and dogmatic mentality can progress. And unhappily, our country and people have become extraordinarily dogmatic and little-minded. In his autobiography, he wrote, quote, the spectacle of what is called religion, or at any rate, organized religion in India and elsewhere, has filled us with horror, and I have frequently condemned it and wished to make a clean sweep of it. He was born a Hindu, and he died an atheist. His life's work was to create an India where there would be no religious influence on the government. I found another quote. This is pretty bold, I think. Even for today, you couldn't say this in this country, at least. I don't know about Canada. But he said, I want nothing to do with any religion concerned with keeping the masses satisfied to live in hunger, filth, and ignorance. I want nothing to do with any order, religious or otherwise, which does not teach people that they are capable of becoming happier and more civilized on this earth, capable of becoming true man, master of his fate, and captain of his soul. To attain this, I would put priests to work also and turn the temples into schools. One of his big things was the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution of India. This was enacted in 1976. The preamble to the Constitution asserted that India is a secular nation. Officially, secularism has always inspired modern India. In practice, unlike Western notions of secularism, India's secularism does not separate religion and state. The Indian Constitution has allowed extensive interference of the state in religious affairs, which seems to be very different from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Mindy, you had something you wanted to talk about theosophy in 2020?
Well, well, I had never heard of this man before. So when I was reading through his little snippet here, his quote, religion merges into mysticism, kind of caught my attention. So I was going through, and it said that he befriended somebody that was a theosophist, theosophist, and I was like, what?
Theosophist.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes,
Thank
there
you.
it is.
And I was like, I have never heard of this before. What the heck is it? So I kind of went down into Wikipedia and did a bunch of reading. And apparently it is a religion that was founded in the States in 1875. And it went to India. And it still actually survives today. They have a website where you can be a member, you can do courses, and I had no idea. So there is like lots of information on what this religion is. It's kind of interesting that it is, it has roots with Hinduism as well and Buddhism, and it has a very mystic feel to it. So it's interesting that he befriended somebody that went on to be a prominent figure in this particular religion.
Well, that just goes to show you when people are trying to work together to try to make social change or to even change in your own private life, you're going to have to team up with people that don't agree with you on every single subject. So it may very well be that the person that he had connected with, I didn't find that theosophy bit in my research, but if you are trying to form this independent state of India and you are an atheist, you are going to have to work with people who disagree with you. In this country, Christians, non-Christians work alike to get things done. They butt heads a lot of time. But in India, I'd imagine that an atheist would be primarily facing Hindu and Sikh individuals and try to work with them.
I was going to say this woman that he Annie Besant, she was actually previously an atheist before she turned to theosophy.
Well, that's interesting. And, looking at this theosophy, but it sounds pretty vague.
It is. It has some interesting beliefs behind it, but it does have that very mystic feel to it.
Yeah. Why am I here? What is the purpose of the universe? Is there a God? Why does there seem to be evil and injustice in the world? How can I have a purpose? Yeah.
One thing that I think that was really nice that Nehru did was advocate for education in India's youth and their children. He believed that the youth of today was going to be, of course, the progress of tomorrow. He instituted at the Institute of Medical Sciences, the Institute of Technology for India Institute of Management. He got a program started for feeding to get rid of malnutrition in children, instituted schools, and a free and enrollment and compulsory enrollment for children for at least 5 years of schooling. This was not there before his work.
Yeah.
So did some great stuff.
So that's the thing. We know that religious believing people, God-loving people out there, they care. Most people care about healthy children, care for the elderly, education. It's not that you have to not believe in. It's not that you have to deny or not believe in the existence of spiritual matters to care about earthly things. But look at this man. I mean, he probably wasn't spending a whole lot of time worrying about whether or not he's going to go to moksha or, eternal enlightenment. His focus was clearly here and now in this world that we live in. We spend so much time, politicians talk so much about, these moral positions, these issues, these catering to religious extremist positions. And I would think that we would all be able to grab that low-hanging fruit. We can all agree that children should have access to medical care, right? They should have access to healthy food and education. But people get sidetracked on these highfalutin spiritual concepts. Well, let's make sure all the kids are fed and educated, and then let's talk about what comes after life. Let's focus on life first, because we know we're here. Well, I think this was an interesting person, and I would encourage everyone out there to look into Jawaharlal Nehru. The last thing I'll say about Mr. Nehru is the Nehru jacket comes from him. So if you like the Beatles,
okay,
yeah, at least that's what I believe. Yeah, I have one. I have a Nehru jacket that I don't ever wear because people want to punch me in the face if I wear it. Don't punch me in the face. I think we should move on to our next article here. This one is religious data platform targets the mentally ill. Malty, do you feel comfortable taking this one? Could you?
Sure. Okay. So this comes from dw.com. The article there is a discussion with a documentary filmmaker, People You May Know by Charles Creel. Mr. Creel is talking about Cambridge Analytica and a software called Insights that has been disseminated to churches so they can better target people for religious conversion. And I think in the documentary, they're saying, and from there, try to influence a more right-wing conservative outlook. So what and with the author of the documentary presenter, what he was talking about was so the way he described it was, look around Birmingham, Alabama, and say if you wanted to find the area of the town that you were suffering, the Insight program would scrape data from, say, Facebook, and then show you where you want to put your church to best target those that were downtrodden, those that had problems with alcohol, problems with drug addiction, problems with homelessness. So it's a nasty piece of software.
It is, and some people might have heard Cambridge Analytica. It flashed in my mind. Do you remember that scandal that happened a couple of years ago? For those who don't remember, Cambridge Analytica was a British consulting firm that was involved in influencing hundreds of elections globally, and that came to prominence through the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal. It was an incident where millions of Facebook users' personal data was acquired without the individual's consent. It was predominantly used for political advertising. It was claimed to be the largest known leak in Facebook history at the time. And what had happened was the Koch brothers funded charity commissioned Cambridge Analytica, along with a software company called Glue, to build a software platform that could be used by churches in order to target vulnerable people. The genie is out of the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Now people have realized that you can use big data and algorithms to predict people's behavior, not individuals' behavior, but masses of people's behavior. And you can use it to guide people toward a certain position. And I would imagine that this organization thinks they're doing God's work, right? They are getting people in line with a Christian perspective and getting them aligned with a conservative perspective that protects the family, that keeps society sound, right? However, it doesn't just stop at let's maintain things where we're at, or which is not good for many, many people in this world. But it could easily roll back the rights of others, right? Getting people to go into extreme religious organizations or extreme political organizations. What I found in my research was that a lot of these different groups that were working with these groups, the Council for National Policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They believe in limiting the size and scope of government to allow Americans greater freedom to reach their fullest potential. Doesn't that sound nice? We believe that the founding fathers created this nation based upon Judeo-Christian values, and that our culture flourishes when we uphold them, right? So what does that look like? Abortion rights, marriage rights, women's rights, different racial segregation issues, different views of how we want our country to how we want our society to function. They want greater freedoms, but when it comes down to it, their definition of greater freedoms is a version of the past that they want to bring back, and that inevitably means tearing away the rights of others to restore that.
Well, greater
Mindy,
freedoms
what did
greater freedoms to oppress or to stigmatize.
Yeah, Mindy, what did you have on this one?
Well, I was looking at how they target. Well, the original article was targeting mentally ill and vulnerable people, and part of that vulnerable group of people are addicts, and that brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was doing some reading on that because I've never been an addict, so I've never done the 12 steps. I don't really know a lot about them, and I don't know anybody that's actually done them. So I actually pulled them up and read them, and I didn't realize how religious that organization is, and that 6 of the 12 steps mention God. And I was like, so what if you're a non-believer and you have an addiction problem? Does that mean that you have to become a believer? Is that how they're targeting the vulnerable people, by bringing them to God through, this is the only way that you can get through your addiction is by coming to God? And I found an article that was called the Irrationality of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it really takes a look at how much they use God and saying that God is the only way. Abstaining from alcohol and giving that addiction over to God is the only way that you can overcome your addiction. And that seems really manipulative to me, because there are other ways that you can deal with addiction. And they're actually doing studies and finding now that there are medications and therapies that you can take that help you reduce your drinking. And that's a lot healthier and a lot easier to achieve than just going cold turkey and, going to an AA meeting and getting your chips. Not saying that that's not what everyone has to do. For some people, it does work. But how do we help the people that it doesn't help? Like, what if somebody can't just go cold turkey? And then I was reading further along, and it actually said that there's, I think it was 1 million doctors. Yeah, there's 1 million out of nearly 1 million doctors in the United States. Only 582 of them identify as actual addiction specialists, people that can, prescribe you medication or prescribe you therapy or help you through an actual addiction, instead of turning you to a meeting like this and saying you have to turn to God in order to beat your addiction. And what else did it say? That a lot of doctors will push you to go to AA meetings, or like, say if you have a DUI or you're charged with some kind of alcohol related or addiction related charge, that you're given the choice of either you have to go to AA meetings or you're going back to jail, and those are your only 2 choices. And if you're not a believer, what do you do then? Do you say, well, I'm going to pretend, or
Yeah. Thankfully, now there are other things that are available. Smart recovery is one, which is a rational emotive behavioral therapy technique that is well documented to work scientifically. And these not even air quotes there, actually. And so I'm hoping that as time moves on and the Freedom from Religion Foundation can get more cases behind them, the choice will be offered those people that need the help to go to places that are not religiously based, if they want to.
I'm thinking the idea of coming into an AA meeting, that part, the community aspect of it, the solidarity with other people who are struggling with an addiction problem, there's still a great shame, I think, on folks who have suffered with these issues, because they're seen as weak, or they're seen as lazy or indulgent, or they're seen as a lot of different things that but for the grace of God go all of us, right? It's a lack of compassion, and those organizations and those meetings can provide compassion and sympathy, not just empathy, which we can empathize all day, but sometimes it's just nice to know that someone else is facing the same thing that you're going through, and together we can bond together and get through this together, right? That's not the part of Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, that anyone would have a real problem with. Yeah.
No, not at all. But one of the things that it mentioned in the article is that the treatment centers and facilities that use these 12 steps in order for recovery, they oftentimes don't report who's coming in, who's checking in, what the success rate is of that. But AA puts out itself saying that 75% of people that recover from or using AA are following everything to a T. And that if you don't fall into that category, then you can't be helped, or you don't want to be helped. And it's like, well, do I have to go and turn to God and accept God in order to be able to accept these 12 steps? Like, where it's so intermingled, like, how are you supposed to be successful if you have to do something you don't agree with?
Right. I'm wondering, is the Alcoholics Anonymous organization, is there an agenda, or is this just a method that they found that seems to have worked? Because in truth, we've talked on the show, or at least in Discord, about the importance of ritual, the importance of a meaning, of a directing meaning in your life, right? It's not enough that we eat and we go to sleep and we do the things that we do on a purely biological basis. Our minds require something deeper, some deeper rootingness in existence, some deeper basis. And I'm wondering if this is Alcoholic Anonymous's way to root a person's struggle with addiction to a greater purpose in life. And because most people are religious on some level, right? They just say, okay, well, a God, right? And is there an allowance for a person who doesn't believe? Like, if I had an addiction issue, what would I do? My love for humanity, which falters on a daily basis, or what would it be? The plight of the I don't know. Like, how would a non-believer try to adapt to this process? I guess is where my mind's going.
It just seems very outdated to me. I mean, I'm not saying that we should just take it away completely, because obviously there's a lot of people out there that benefit from it. But we also need to put out there that there are other options. AA is not the only option. You have other options. And the science behind it right now is showing that there's medications and other ways that you can do this, that where you can be more successful. And I think we need to bring some light to that as well.
Sure. Malty, did you
Good
have
point.
something you wanted to say?
Well, just at the very beginning, when the study that launched AA was a small study at one VA hospital, where you had this community group or nothing. That was the only scientific study that was ever done to try to show that this 12-step program works in a method. So I think that there's been quite a bit of people saying that it was not a properly run study. I've also heard, though I can't bring up statistical data right now, that the recidivism rate for 12-step programs is quite high, but we actually don't have numbers from it because it's all self-reporting. There are the way that AA or these 12-step programs are trying to help you deal with the stressors that you were using alcohol, drugs, whatever, to try to deal with. If you do not have a way of dealing with those in a helpful, in a positive manner, if you're just said, you're broken and look to God, here's a different drug for you to go to, it doesn't seem like it's a very useful tool.
Well, to bring it back to, I think, to the article, and then to I guess to move on to our next article, my thought on this one was the poor, the vulnerable are always a tool in the hands of somebody, it seems. They are fodder for someone's agenda. I believe that there are many people in organizations who want to help people, right? People in churches who donate to charitable organizations, people who go and help people with food or clothing, things like that. I know Christian people in Texas who have a person I used to work with would make little care packages, right, with socks and handy wipes, little things like that, little snacks like a power bar, and the kids would hand it out the window when they'd see a person on the street, right? I know they were doing that out of a sense of human compassion. I think the lower down you get in the totem pole, when it's just a person, right, I think you can trust that people are just trying to help. But the higher up you get, when you start looking at Cambridge Analytica or these different organizations that we mentioned, the Senate Council for National Policy, Citizens for Self-Governance, my research went an entirely different direction. You guys were looking at that. I was looking at this. I was looking at these attempts to change society, to find the most vulnerable, most susceptible to influence people in society, and use them to change the society so that they could concentrate power, so that these organizations can concentrate power, so that they themselves are on top, instead of having to deal with these liberals and these progressive and these LGBT folks. Forget about all that. That is very insidious to me, and it's always going to be with us now. I don't see any way. We have to be watching for these kind of things. We need to make sure that when we are helping others, we're not helping them with an agenda. One of the great things about the ACA is when we go and give food to the homeless, we don't have to make them sit through any preachy talky. Here's some food. You want to talk to us, you're welcome to do it, but here's some food, and we're going to be here next week. I mean, you don't have to sit on a sermon. You don't have to, like a timeshare. Like you go do like some sort of they sell you timeshares. And you have to sit through like a 3-hour presentation in order to get your free weekend in Keystone, Colorado, or whatever. It's not like
I got
that.
16 that way.
Did you? Did it work? That's wonderful.
I did. Yep.
You
It was
toughed it
family
out.
vacation. We sat through a 2-hour presentation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you end up purchasing or no?
No.
What were
No,
they?
we
What were
just
they
had to show up, and then we got our tickets.
I wish people would ask me to show up and give me tickets to something. It just hasn't happened.
This was also like 25 years ago, so.
Okay. All right. Well, some good stuff here. Something to keep in mind. I think we're going to go on to our last article. Malty, you've done such a great job. Could you take us through this one as well?
We're talking about Jerry Falwell Jr., I believe. Is that what we're talking about?
That's it.
Liberty.
That's right.
He is suing Liberty University for ruining his reputation.
I had him in such high estimation before. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? What is he saying?
So this is coming from the Friendly Atheist at patheos.com. What he's saying, so there's actually been a little bit of progress, a little bit of more coming out since we first looked at this, and that just a few days ago. A judge has unredacted some of the complaints. Tell me, so it's like you can put a lawsuit in, but you can also tell the judge or the court that you don't want the public to see what you're suing over. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can file some things under seal.
Okay, and well, so those were unsealed. And what was unsealed was the exact reasoning. So the Falwell's attorney believed that the defamation suit hinges. This is what's this suit is the defamation of character on provisions in his contract that have been claimed bars the university officials from making, quote, defamatory or slanderous remarks or publicly discussing reasons behind his resignation. Now, his resignation, since he was not fired, Mr. Falwell is saying that that's why these are were part of his contract when he was with the university. As just a recap, Falwell was not terminated but left the university voluntarily. This is while he was on a probationary leave from administrative duties, since he was pictures of him with his pants halfway unzipped with his arm
Oh,
around his wife's secretary while holding a drink. This was
why
on
were
one of
there
the
pants
yachts of a university, Liberty University's major donors. So then it came out that his wife was having an affair with the pool boy and he was cuckolded, which is fine if that's what you want to do, but it didn't fly
Yeah.
well with the university. So
Yeah.
he stepped down.
Yeah. Mindy, any thoughts on this one?
I saw the picture and I was like, oh no, why are their pants undone? I don't understand this. Why are their pants undone?
He had
So
a
I was like,
baby
I
bump.
need, ugh. I was like, I need to find out more about this man because I'd never heard of him before. This is the first I've ever actually
Really?
heard his name.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So what I found was an article going about how this particular reporter in this article has some kind of special relationship with them. And he was able to talk to several staff. And he said in the article that a lot of the staff at the university have to sign very strict non-disclosure agreements, that they kind of gossip within the university, but no one actually goes out and reports any of this crazy stuff that he's doing because they're restricted with these NDAs that they're not allowed to talk about it. But a
Yeah.
lot of them are now coming forward and kind of disregarding it, saying, this is the kind of stuff that's going on. One of the things that actually kind of jumped out at me is one of the a senior university official said that we're not a school, we're a real estate hedge fund. We're not educating, we're buying real estate every year and taking students' money to do it. And I was like, well, that's a reason for investigation right there.
Again, taking your pants and opening them up like that, being on a yacht, having a good time with somebody who's pregnant, having three-ways and cuckoldy relationships with pool boys, all of this, there's nothing really objectionable about any of these things as long as everybody's consenting.
Right.
I know that from a certain perspective, of course, it's a sin and it's wrong and it's terrible. But here, the thing that really gets me is this: not that people fall short of their moral expectations for themselves, but that they are such profound hypocrites that they are able to look others in the face and tell them that they can't do something like this, and then they're doing it behind closed doors and doing it with the approval of others, like this person here. Okay, right? One of the major donors, right? One of the major donors' yachts, right? I'm assuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
This person's giving money to this university that stands for the certain principles, right? And yet, on the other hand, they're having who knows what kinds of fabulous debauchery on the other hand. So it's just a money-making con. Is that what it is? Again, down on the grassroots level, people that go there, people that believe in their particular brand of Christianity, I'm sure they're not living this fabulous life with pool boys. They're truly believers, almost like with Scientologists, people on the street that are trying to convert you with their little tin cans, right? Buy this book. I believe that they're true believers. But again, the higher up you get, I think you start getting wise to the fact that this is a scheme to fleece people out of their money. And so very few can be profoundly wealthy and influential. I just think that's the disgusting part to me. I'm sure there's lots of pool boys out there that wish they could get themselves into a situation like this. Because it sounds like it's a real, rocket ship to some.
Well,
good
he
old
was trying to
blackmail
get he was trying to get his bachelor's degree from the local state university. That's how he was paying for it, was doing this work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, it really bothers me. The hypocrisy is astounding when the Falwells state things like quote. That Liberty University, quote, moved quickly to destroy Mr. Falwell's reputation in the Liberty community and nationwide. In particular, the suit highlights a speech that the campus pastor, David Nesser, delivered to students shortly after Mr. Falwell's departure. Nessa referred to the things that led to Mr. Falwell's resignation as sinful behavior and shameful. And so because a priest told the student body this, Mr. Falwell might be getting more money from that university, more than the millions of dollars on his golden parachute. I mean, the audacity is astounding.
The big thing that happens to me is you're hitching your wagon to an organization like this finger wagging, naughty, you're a sinner, you're bad. Only this pure form of life is acceptable. You've heard the phrase, if you lie down with dogs, you get fleas, something like that. What do you expect is going to happen? No one can live this level of purity. Everything is unacceptable except this very narrow path, the eye of the needle, right? We hear about how the left is always chewing itself up, is always eating itself, right? You're not a true enough believer. You're not woke enough. You're not this. Well, the right's doing the same thing, right? This is an example of it. Falwell's having some good times with the pool boy and his wife and doing all kinds of things, living a pretty fabulous lifestyle. And here they are distancing themselves, making him get away. I really feel bad for Mr. Falwell. I really hope that that he really comes to accept it. I hope he has a come to Jesus moment with his pastor. I hope that he can really just get right with God and then make that return that inevitably happens when one of these fuckers gets caught in the middle of something like this. And then all they have to do is, make that face that politicians and leaders always make with their, I think of it as the Bill Clinton face of
they feel.
That shame. And Anthony Weiner did one, repentance. Yeah.
A lot of Christians will take this as an opportunity to say, look, we're all flawed. We all need Jesus. We all need God, no matter who you are. We're all broken. We need God. And this is a perfect example of it.
I hate that.
I can see that.
Yeah. It's not about being perfect because we're fallen creatures, right? It's about submission to the Lord Christ Jesus and accepting him as your personal savior, and only through Jesus will you be saved, because you don't deserve it on your own. It's God's grace is what you need. Well, fuck that. Free up the pool boys. That's all I got to say, And also he had to do this to get his degree in college. Well, maybe Liberty University, if you would back free college tuition to people who are willing to work hard, then we wouldn't have to have pool boys who are getting involved with creepos like Mr. Falwell.
And let's not make a distinction here. He was not going to Liberty University, the pool boy.
No, that's right. A state university, which should be more affordable, right? How much does it cost?
Hopefully a better education.
Hopefully a better education. How much does it even cost to go to Liberty University? I hope it's less than a state university.
Yeah.
But anyhow. Well, I think we've, actually, Malty, you've got something here about don't confuse revenge with justice.
Well,
what was that?
I was thinking about going into what the Falwells were saying and looking at this lawsuit in a way of is this revenge, or is Mr. Falwell trying to get justice from what he's seeing as a slight, I guess.
Yeah.
So I had looked at an article, I think it was Psychology Today, and it was the 5 revenge versus justice, 5 different things that you can compare and contrast. So like revenge is predominantly an emotional response, while justice is primarily rational. So when I look at what the Falwells are saying here about what the slight was, is this an emotional response? Is this a rational response? is revenge by nature is personal, justice is impersonal.
Mm-hmm.
Revenge is an act of vindictiveness, and justice of vindication. So I was wondering what you all had, what's your thoughts on these, whether or not Jerry is looking for revenge or looking for justice.
Mindy, why don't you take us with that one first?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, it strikes me as revenge.
Yeah.
It absolutely strikes me like you're gonna talk bad about me, so I'm gonna lash out about, I'm gonna get you back, and that screams revenge to me.
Revenge is about retaliation, justice about restoring balance. Yeah.
Yeah. He's suing for money damages, right?
An undisclosed amount, correct. Yeah. And also that the university is responsible for his lawyer's fees.
Oh yeah, attorney fees. That's pretty standard.
Okay.
I don't think it's about vengeance. I don't think it's about justice. I think, like so many people, they get caught in this position. He's looking for a payday, because I think, it's my opinion, I think he and this organization has been fleecing people for a long time. And it's all about, should I even say that it's all about the Benjamins, baby? Is that too dated a reference? I think it is. It's all about that payday. He needs his cash. He's lived a pretty luxurious life, probably his whole life, because of his father's very influential work and all of that money. He's rich as shit, and he wants more cash because he's afraid that gravy train is going to dry up now. So he's got to get his. And if he wins, I'm not saying he will, no idea, there is going to be money damages that Liberty University is going to have to pay him. Who is going to pay for that? It's going to be the students. It's going to be folks from the who are contributing to the endowment. Ultimately, in some way, it could be us as taxpayers, right?
Don't say things like that, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this is a cash grab, like so many lawsuits are. It's not about justice. I'm not a fair question, Malty, but I think it's a false dichotomy. I think this is about cash, money, cash, money, cash.
Okay.
So, yeah. Well, I had a good time today. Sassy, Mindy, Sassy Heathen.
This was an experience. I'm not as nervous as when I first started out. That's for sure.
This was an experience. I hope that was a good experience.
Absolutely, a good experience. Right. I enjoyed myself.
What did you think of my chili, Sassy? It was an experience. I enjoyed having you on. I know Malty did, and it's great to see you. Where can we see you? Where can we find you on the YouTubes and elsewhere?
You can find me on the YouTubes and on the Twitter at the Sassy Heathen.
Okay.
And I have my own URL on YouTube, so it's just youtube.com/the Sassy Heathen. Yeah, that's where I put most of my work, and I do fiddle around with Twitter a little bit, but yeah.
All right. Well, I hope I'm not being presumptuous, but I'd love to have you back on sometime.
Absolutely. If you guys want to have me back, I'd love to.
Okay, good. I was holding my breath like, no, screw you, Johnny Angel.
No. I'm Canadian. I can't be that mean.
Oh, that's right. Screw you, please. Or something.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
I'm sorry that you exist. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Just for a quick roundup, we talked about how men are responsible for how their wives vote, and they just got to get right with it, get right with God, and accept that their husbands are in charge of their voting. We talked about emotional suppression and how atheists never laugh, nor do they ever cry. They're just volcanic. They're Vulcans. So, all that. Jawaharlal Nehru and his bold atheism in India in the 1940s through the 1960s. Please look into him more. I'm sure there's some really fantastic material on him and the trials and tribulations of his life. We talked about how Religious Data Platform was targeting the mentally ill and the vulnerable people in our society, and how we're going to always have to be on the lookout for that going forward now. And of course, your friend and mine, Jerry Falwell Jr. and his righteous crusade, dare I say, crusade for clearing his good name
For the
with,
cash monies.
Cash monies.
Couch monies.
It was the cash monies as well. Thank you so much for being on the show. Any last thoughts? What do you want to take us out with, Malty and Sassy? What do you got?
Well, I would say, Sassy, you're definitely welcome to come on over to the Discord. I know it's a different platform than what you're used to, but we'd love to see you and build community as best we can there. It's a welcoming place, and you're definitely welcome to join us.
Awesome.
Like that.
I'd absolutely. Yeah. If I could learn how to use Discord or have someone help me.
Sure,
But I mean,
we can do that.
I am really, really excited to be involved in any way possible in the ACA. It's just kind of been a goal of mine since I started walking this atheist path. So this was a really, really big deal for me, guys. So thank you so much for having me.
You did fantastic. Goal achieved. Now we want to see more. We want to see more of you and the stuff that you can do. Please get out there, check out Sassy's stuff, check out Discord, get involved, get talking to people, reach out to vulnerable people, and don't have an agenda. Just ask them if they need something and help them out. I am so happy to be here with you two. We're going to leave now. You can support us, the nonprofits, at Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/thenonprofits. If you can't afford to do so, don't do it, because we want you to take care of yourselves in these difficult times as well. Send us an email. That's free, mostly. Tell us what you think. We'd really benefit from your feedback. We've got some really good stuff coming up, thanks to some people who have chimed in. You can get a hold of us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. We'll see you next time.